My name is Anthony Ebarita, and this isn't about forgiveness. It's about the moment you realize that sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones writing your obituary while you're still breathing. The call came on a Tuesday at 3:47 p.m. I know the exact time because I was staring at my phone, watching my daughter Sophia laugh at some video on her tablet right next to me on the couch. The voice on the other end was urgent, professional, terrifying. "Mr. Ebarita, this is Dr. Martinez from Riverside General. Your daughter Sophia has been in a serious accident. She's in emergency surgery right now. You need to get here immediately." I looked at Sophia, 7 years old, gap-toothed smile, still giggling at cartoon cats. Very much not in surgery. Very much not at Riverside General. Very much sitting in our living room eating goldfish crackers and getting crumbs on my leather couch. "I think you have the wrong number," I said, my voice steady, even though my heart had started doing something weird in my chest. "Sir, this is regarding Sophia Marie Ebarita, age 7. Are you not her father?" Sophia Marie. That was her full name. The name only family and doctors used. The name that was on her birth certificate, her medical records, her school enrollment. I looked at my daughter again. She was real. She was here. She was fine. But someone, somewhere, had convinced a hospital that she wasn't. That Tuesday started like any other. I'd picked up Sophia from school at 2:30, same as always. Lincoln Elementary, room 12B, Mrs. Patterson's second grade class. Sophia had bounded out with her backpack bouncing, chattering about how Jamie Morrison had brought his pet hermit crab for show and tell, and how it had somehow escaped and caused chaos during math time. We'd stopped at the corner market for her usual after-school snack, those terrible orange crackers shaped like fish that she insisted tasted better than the regular kind. I'd let her pick out a juice box, the kind with the bendy straw that she always insisted on, even though she was perfectly capable of drinking from a regular cup. The drive home was filled with her singing along to some pop song on the radio, her voice slightly off-key but confident in that way only children can manage. She'd asked if we could have spaghetti for dinner, the kind with the little meatballs, and I'd said yes, because Tuesdays were easy days. No soccer practice, no piano lessons, no rushing around, just us. Our house sat at the end of Maple Street, a quiet cul-de-sac where the biggest excitement usually came from Mrs. Chen's cat getting stuck in the oak tree or Mr. Williams forgetting to bring in his garbage cans. It was the kind of neighborhood where kids still rode bikes until the streetlights came on, where people waved from their driveways, where nothing dramatic ever happened. I'd bought the house 3 years ago, right after the divorce was finalized. It wasn't much to look at from the outside, just a simple 2-story colonial with blue shutters and a front porch that creaked when you walked on it. But it was ours, mine and Sophia's, the first place that had felt like home since everything fell apart with Rebecca. Inside, Sophia had immediately claimed the living room couch as her homework spot, spreading her spelling words and math worksheets across the coffee table while I made us both some chocolate milk. She was working on a project about community helpers, drawing pictures of firefighters and teachers and doctors with crayons that were worn down to nubs. That's when my phone rang. The number was local, but I didn't recognize it. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Maybe it was the professional tone of the ringtone, or the fact that it was the middle of a Tuesday afternoon when most people were at work. Emergency calls always seem to come at the strangest times. "Hello? Mr. Ebarita, this is Dr. Martinez from Riverside General Hospital." The words hit me like cold water. Hospitals didn't call unless something was wrong. Very wrong. My eyes immediately found Sophia, still coloring at the coffee table, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration as she tried to stay inside the lines. "Yes, this is Anthony Ebarita. Sir, I'm calling about your daughter, Sophia. She's been brought in following a serious motor vehicle accident. She's currently in emergency surgery, and we need you to come to the hospital immediately." The world tilted. Not dramatically, not like in the movies where everything spins and crashes, just a subtle shift, like the foundation of reality had moved an inch to the left and nothing quite lined up anymore. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Your daughter Sophia has been in an accident, Mr. Ebarita. She was brought in by ambulance about 20 minutes ago. She has sustained significant injuries and is currently undergoing emergency surgery. We need you here as soon as possible." I looked at Sophia again. She'd finished coloring the firefighter and had moved on to the police officer, carefully selecting a blue crayon from the box. She was humming something under her breath, completely absorbed in her work. "Doctor, I think there's been a mistake. My daughter is right here with me." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Not the kind of pause that comes with confusion, but the kind that comes with certainty being challenged. "Sir, are you currently with Sophia Marie Ebarita, date of birth March 15th, 2016? My blood went cold. That was her exact birth date, her middle name, information that wasn't just floating around in the public domain. "Yes, she's sitting right here in my living room." "Mr. Ebarita, I understand this must be confusing, but I have a 7-year-old girl here who was brought in with identification showing her name as Sophia Marie Ebarita. She's unconscious, but the paramedics found a school ID in her backpack with that name and your contact information listed as her emergency contact." My hand was shaking now. Sophia looked up from her coloring, noticing something in my expression. "Daddy, who's on the phone?" I forced a smile, held up one finger to signal I'd be just a minute. "Doctor, can you hold on 1 second?" I muted the phone and knelt down next to Sophia. "Sweetheart, did you lose your school ID today? The little card with your picture on it?" She shook her head immediately. "No, it's right here." She patted her backpack, then unzipped the front pocket and pulled out the small laminated card. There she was, gap-toothed grin, messy hair from picture day, her name printed clearly at the bottom. I unmuted the phone. "Doctor, my daughter has her school ID right here with her. She never lost it." Another pause, longer this time. "Mr. Ebarita, I'm going to need you to come to the hospital. There's clearly some kind of mix-up here, but we have a little girl who needs medical attention, and all of her identification points to your family. Can you come in so we can sort this out?" Something about his tone had changed. It wasn't the urgent crisis mode voice anymore. It was careful, measured, like he was trying to figure out a puzzle and didn't want to alarm anyone until he had the pieces in place. "Of course. Riverside General?" "Yes, emergency department. Ask for Dr. Martinez when you arrive." I hung up and looked at Sophia, who had gone back to her coloring but was glancing at me every few seconds with that intuitive awareness that kids have when adults are trying to hide something. "Sophie, we need to take a quick trip to the hospital. Nothing's wrong," I added quickly when her eyes went wide. "There's just some confusion about something and we need to help clear it up." "Are we in trouble?" "No, baby, we're not in trouble. Someone just made a mistake and we're going to help fix it." She nodded and started packing up her crayons with the methodical precision she applied to everything. Sophia had always been an organized kid, the type who lined up her stuffed animals in a specific order before bed and arranged her breakfast cereal by color. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. It was one of the things that made this whole situation feel even more surreal. My daughter was predictable, routine-oriented, accounted for. She didn't just appear in random hospitals. The drive to Riverside General took 12 minutes, through the familiar streets of our small city, past the playground where Sophia learned to swing by herself, past the ice cream shop where we celebrated her losing her first tooth, past the library where we spent every Saturday morning picking out new books. Everything looked normal, unchanged, like the world hadn't just tilted off its axis with a phone call. Sophia chattered in the back seat about her drawing, asking if we could stop for French fries on the way home, completely oblivious to the knot that was forming in my stomach. Part of me wondered if I was overreacting. Mistaken identity calls probably happened all the time. Kids had similar names, similar ages. It was probably just a clerical error that would be cleared up in 5 minutes with a simple comparison of faces. But something nagged at me. The specificity of the information, the middle name, the exact birth date, the fact that somehow, somewhere, there was identification with Sophia's name that didn't belong to my Sophia. Riverside General was a mid-sized hospital that served our county, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and serious traumas got transferred to the bigger facilities in the city. I'd been there once before when Sophia had gotten a concussion falling off the monkey bars at age 5. The staff had been kind, professional, thorough, not the type of place where major mix-ups happened. I parked in the emergency lot and helped Sophia out of her car seat. She slipped her small hand into mine as we walked toward the automatic doors, her other hand clutching the small stuffed elephant she'd insisted on bringing. "Remember, we're just here to help clear up some confusion," I told her as we approached the reception desk. The woman behind the counter looked up with a tired smile. "Can I help you?" "I'm Anthony Ebarita. Dr. Martinez called me about my daughter." Her expression shifted immediately. The polite, generic smile was replaced by something more complex. Confusion, maybe? Or recognition. "Oh, Mr. Ebarita. Yes, the doctor said you were coming in." She glanced down at Sophia, then back at me. "He's with the patient right now, but he should be available in just a few minutes. Can you have a seat in the family consultation room? It's just down the hall." She pointed to a small room with a glass door and comfortable chairs, the kind of room where they delivered bad news or had difficult conversations. I'd been in a similar room 3 years ago when the doctors explained that they'd done everything they could for my father, but sometimes hearts just stopped working. Sophia and I settled into the chairs, and she immediately started arranging the magazines on the coffee table by size. A few minutes later, a man in scrubs appeared at the door. Tall, Latino, maybe 45, with the kind of calm demeanor that came from years of emergency medicine. "Mr. Ebarita? I'm Dr. Martinez. Thank you for coming in so quickly." He glanced at Sophia, and I saw something flicker across his face. Not recognition exactly, but something close to it. "Doctor, this is my daughter, Sophia. As you can see, she's perfectly fine, and definitely not in surgery." "Yes, I can see that." He sat down across from us, his hands clasped together. "Mr. Ebarita, we have a situation here that I've never encountered in 15 years of emergency medicine. About an hour ago, paramedics brought in a 7-year-old girl following a car accident. She was unconscious but stable. When we checked for identification, we found a school ID in her backpack with the name Sophia Marie Ebarita, along with emergency contact information listing you as her father." He paused, studying my face. "The girl we have here looks remarkably similar to your daughter. Same age, same general build, same hair color. But now that I see you both together, there are definitely differences. The bone structure is slightly different, the eye color is close but not identical." My mouth had gone dry. Someone is using my daughter's identity? That's what we're trying to find out. The girl is still unconscious, so we haven't been able to question her. But Mr. Ebarita, the identification she had wasn't just a name written on a piece of paper. It was a legitimate-looking Lincoln Elementary School ID with what appears to be an official photo and lamination. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Lincoln Elementary? That's Sophia's school. We know. We called the school to verify, and they confirmed that Sophia Marie Ebarita is indeed a student there. But they also said that Sophia was picked up by her father at normal dismissal time today and that there were no incidents reported. Sophia looked up from her magazine organizing. "Daddy, why are we talking about my school?" Dr. Martinez smiled gently at her. "We're just making sure we have the right information, sweetheart. Everything's okay." But everything wasn't okay. Someone had created identification for a child using my daughter's name and information. Someone had equipped that child with what appeared to be official school documentation. Someone had made sure that if anything happened to this child, the call would come to me. "Doctor, can I see the ID that was found?" He nodded and left the room briefly, returning with a small plastic bag containing what looked exactly like Sophia's school ID. Same format, same school logo, same style of photo. But the face in the picture, while similar to Sophia's, was definitely different. The nose was slightly wider, the eyes a shade darker, the smile less gap-toothed. "Have you contacted the police?" I asked. "We're required to report suspected child identity theft, yes. Detective Morrison should be here within the hour to take statements and begin an investigation." Detective Morrison? I knew that name from somewhere, but couldn't place it immediately. In the meantime, Dr. Martinez continued, we're treating the injured child for her medical needs. She has a concussion and some bruising, but no life-threatening injuries. She should regain consciousness soon, and hopefully we'll get some answers. I looked down at Sophia, who was now quietly playing with her stuffed elephant, making it walk across the arm of the chair. She seemed completely unaware that someone, somewhere, had been living pieces of her life. Doctor, how is something like this even possible? How does someone get official-looking school identification for a child who isn't enrolled? That's exactly what we're hoping to find out. But Mr. Ebarita, I have to ask some questions that might feel uncomfortable. Is there anyone in your life who might have access to Sophia's personal information? Anyone who might have reasons to create false identification for another child? The question hung in the air like smoke. I thought about the people who knew Sophia's full name, her birth date, her school. Family members, teachers, doctors, insurance companies. The list wasn't enormous, but it wasn't short either. I can't think of anyone who would do something like this. My ex-wife has access to Sophia's information, but she would never. I trailed off, not because I thought Rebecca was capable of identity theft, but because I realized I was making assumptions about someone I thought I knew completely until I realized I didn't know her at all. We'll need to speak with her as well, just to rule out all possibilities. A knock on the door interrupted us. A woman in a police uniform peered in. Dr. Martinez, I'm Detective Sarah Morrison. I understand we have an unusual situation here. Detective Morrison was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with short brown hair and intelligent eyes that took in the whole scene immediately. She introduced herself to me and Sophia, her manner professional but warm. Mr. Ebarita, I know this must be confusing and probably frightening.
We're going to figure out what's going on here. Can you walk me through your day, starting from when you picked up Sophia from school? I recounted the afternoon, from pickup to snacks to homework time to the phone call. She took notes, asked clarifying questions, confirmed times and locations. Has anything unusual happened lately? Any strangers asking questions about Sophia? Any feeling that you were being watched or followed? I thought back over the past few weeks. Normal days, normal routines. Soccer practice, grocery shopping, parent-teacher conferences. Nothing that stood out as suspicious or strange. What about your ex-wife? When did you last speak with her? Rebecca? Last weekend, when she dropped Sophia off after her custody time. Everything was normal. How would you characterize your relationship with your ex-wife? It was a loaded question, the kind that couldn't be answered simply. Rebecca and I had divorced 3 years ago after what the mediator had called irreconcilable differences, which was a polite way of saying we'd discovered we wanted completely different lives. The divorce had been relatively amicable, focused on what was best for Sophia rather than on assigning blame or seeking revenge. It's cordial. We co-parent effectively. There's no animosity or ongoing conflict. Detective Morrison nodded, making more notes. I'm going to need her contact information so we can speak with her as well. This isn't about suspicion, it's about gathering complete information. Before I could respond, Dr. Martinez's pager buzzed. He glanced at it and stood up. The injured child is regaining consciousness. Detective Morrison, would you like to be present when we speak with her? Absolutely. Mr. Ebarita, I'm going to ask you and Sophia to wait here for a few more minutes while we talk to the other child. Depending on what we learn, we may need you to see her, but I want to get her initial statement first. They left, and Sophia and I were alone in the small room. She'd finished organizing the magazines and was now lining up the packets of crackers from the vending machine that I'd bought her to keep her occupied. Daddy, are we helping the doctors? Yes, sweetheart, we're helping them figure out something confusing. Is someone sick? Someone got hurt, but the doctors are taking good care of her. She nodded solemnly. At 7, Sophia had a basic understanding that adults sometimes had to deal with complicated things, and she'd learned to trust that I would handle whatever needed handling. 20 minutes passed before Detective Morrison returned alone. Her expression was more serious than before. Mr. Ebarita, we have a problem. The child claims her name is Sophia Ebarita, and she says you're her father. When we asked her about her mother, she said her mother's name is Rebecca, and she described a woman who matches your ex-wife's general appearance. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. She knew details, Mr. Ebarita. She knew that her parents are divorced, that she lives with her father most of the time, that her mother lives in an apartment across town. She described your house, down to the blue shutters and the creaky front porch. I looked at Sophia, who was listening with the focused attention she usually reserved for story time. Someone has been feeding this child information about our lives. That's our working theory, but it's very detailed information, Mr. Ebarita. She knew that you work in construction, that you drive a gray Ford pickup, that her favorite stuffed animal is an elephant named Peanut. Sophia held up her stuffed elephant. "This is Peanut," she said quietly. "The question is, who has access to this level of detail about your family's daily life, and why would they use it to create a false identity for another child?" Before I could answer, my phone rang. Rebecca's name appeared on the screen. "It's my ex-wife," I told Detective Morrison. "Answer it. Put it on speaker." I accepted the call and touched the speaker button. "Anthony? I just got the strangest call from Riverside General. Something about Sophia being in an accident? But that's impossible. She's with you today." "Rebecca, I'm at the hospital right now with Sophia. She's fine. There's been some kind of mix-up." "What kind of mix-up?" "The doctor said Sophia was in surgery." Detective Morrison leaned forward. "Mrs. Ebarita, this is Detective Morrison with the police department. We have a situation here that we're investigating. Are you able to come to Riverside General to answer some questions?" "Police? Anthony, what's going on?" "Just come to the hospital, Rebecca. Everything's okay, but we need to figure some things out. I'll be there in 15 minutes. After she hung up, Detective Morrison and I sat in silence for a moment. Sophia had grown quiet too, sensing the tension in the room even if she didn't understand its source. "Mr. Ebarita, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. Is there any possibility that you have another child you don't know about? Any possibility that there was infidelity during your marriage that could have resulted in a second child?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I thought about my marriage to Rebecca, about the trust we'd built, about the conversations we'd had about expanding our family before things started falling apart. "No, absolutely not. Sophia is our only child." "What about your ex-wife? Any possibility she had a relationship that resulted in another child?" I started to give the same definitive answer, then stopped. After the divorce, Rebecca and I had focused on co-parenting Sophia. We didn't discuss our personal lives in detail. I knew she dated, but I didn't know specifics. Could she have had another relationship that resulted in a child? Could she have kept it secret? "I don't know," I admitted. "We don't really talk about our personal lives anymore." Detective Morrison nodded. "We'll ask her directly when she arrives. In the meantime, I'd like you to meet the injured child. She's awake and stable, and I think seeing both of you together might help us understand what's happening here." The walk down the hospital corridor felt endless. Sophia held my hand tightly, her small steps trying to match my longer ones. We passed the nurse's station, a medication room, and several empty patient rooms before stopping outside room 314. "Are you ready for this?" Detective Morrison asked. I wasn't. How could anyone be ready to meet a child who was apparently living a version of your life? But I nodded anyway. The girl in the hospital bed looked up when we entered. The resemblance to Sophia was unmistakable, but so were the differences. She was slightly taller, her hair a shade darker, her eyes brown instead of Sophia's hazel. She had a bandage on her forehead and her left arm was in a sling, but she was alert and watching us intently. When she saw Sophia, her eyes widened. "Who is that?" she asked, her voice small and confused. Detective Morrison approached the bed. "Sweetheart, this is Mr. Ebarita and his daughter Sophia. Can you tell me your name?" "I'm Sophia," the girl said, looking between us uncertainly. "Sophia Ebarita. That's my daddy." She pointed at me. "But who is she? Why does she look like me?" My daughter squeezed my hand tighter and whispered, "Daddy, why does she have my name?" I knelt down so I was at eye level with both girls. "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but we're going to figure it out." The injured girl's eyes filled with tears. "I want my mommy. Where's my mommy?" "What's your mommy's name?" Detective Morrison asked gently. "Rebecca. Her name is Rebecca, and she works at the bank, and she lives in the apartment with the red door." Rebecca did work at a bank, and her apartment did have a red door. Sweetheart, Detective Morrison continued, what's your daddy's name? Anthony Ebarita. He builds houses, and he drives a great truck, and he makes the best pancakes on Sunday mornings. Every detail was correct. Someone had taught this child the intimate details of our family life with stunning accuracy. Where do you live? I asked, my voice hoarse. On Maple Street, in the house with blue shutters. My room is upstairs and it has glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. Sophia's room did have glow-in-the-dark stars. I'd put them up myself when we moved in, arranging them in constellation patterns we'd studied in her astronomy book. What's your favorite food? Sophia asked quietly. Spaghetti with little meatballs, and orange crackers shaped like fish. Sophia looked up at me with wide eyes. Those were her favorites too. Before anyone could ask another question, there was a commotion in the hallway. Rebecca's voice, raised and urgent, talking to someone at the nurse's station. Where is she? Is she okay? I need to see my daughter right now. Detective Morrison stepped out of the room briefly, and I could hear her speaking with Rebecca in low tones. When they returned, Rebecca's face was pale and confused. Anthony, what is... She stopped when she saw the injured girl in the bed. Her face went completely white, and she grabbed the door frame to steady herself. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God, what is this? The injured girl's face lit up when she saw Rebecca. Mommy, I was in an accident, but I'm okay now. The doctor said I'm going to be fine. Rebecca stared at the child, her mouth opening and closing without sound. She looked at me, then at Sophia, then back at the injured girl. I don't understand. Who is this child? Mommy, it's me. It's Sophia. Why are you looking at me like that? And why is there another girl who looks like me? Detective Morrison watched Rebecca's reaction carefully. Mrs. Ebarita, have you ever seen this child before? No, never. I have no idea who she is or how she knows about our family. She knows very specific details about your life, your workplace, your apartment, personal information about your family routines. That's impossible. How could she know any of that? The injured girl was crying now, confused and frightened by the adult's reactions. Mommy, why won't you hug me? Why are you acting like you don't know me? Rebecca approached the bed slowly, her movements careful and uncertain. Sweetheart, I think there's been a mistake. Can you tell me your real name? I told you, I'm Sophia Marie Ebarita. I'm 7 years old, and I go to Lincoln Elementary, and Mrs. Patterson is my teacher, and I lost my first tooth last month, and you put it under my pillow for the tooth fairy. Rebecca's face crumpled. All of those details were accurate for our Sophia. Anthony, she whispered, someone has been watching us. Someone has been studying our family, learning our routines, teaching this child to impersonate our daughter. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't random identity theft. This was targeted, deliberate, planned. Someone had invested significant time and effort to create a second version of our daughter. But why? I asked. What could anyone gain from this? Detective Morrison was taking notes rapidly. That's what we need to figure out. Mrs. Ebarita, I need to ask you the same questions I asked your ex-husband. Has anything unusual happened lately? Any strangers asking questions? Any feeling that you were being watched? Rebecca shook her head slowly. Nothing. Everything has been completely normal. Work, home, spending time with Sophia on weekends, nothing out of the ordinary. What about your personal life? Are you in a relationship with anyone who might have access to family information? I've been dating someone for about 6 months, but casually. He's never met Sophia, and I don't discuss personal details about my family with him. I'll need his name and contact information. As Rebecca provided the details, I found myself studying the injured girl more closely. Despite the similarities to Sophia, there were subtle differences that became more apparent the longer I looked. Her laugh was different when the nurse made a joke about the hospital food. Her posture was slightly different. Small things, but noticeable once you knew what to look for. Detective Morrison, I said, I think we need to find out who this child really is. Someone is missing a daughter right now, and they probably don't even know she's been living as our daughter." The detective nodded. "We've already started that process. We're running fingerprints and checking missing children databases. But Mr. Ebarita, I have to tell you that this level of identity manipulation suggests something much larger than a simple custody dispute or family feud. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to create this situation." "What kind of lengths?" "Professional quality identification documents, detailed surveillance of your family to gather personal information, careful coaching of the child to memorize your family's details. This took months of planning and significant resources." The implications of what she was saying started to sink in. Someone had been watching us for months, studying our routines, learning our secrets, preparing to execute some kind of plan that involved replacing our daughter. "Are we in danger?" Rebecca asked.
I don't know yet, but I'm going to recommend that you both take precautions until we figure out what's going on here. Vary your routines, be aware of your surroundings, then call me immediately if anything seems unusual. A new voice from the doorway interrupted us. "Excuse me, is this room 314? We turned to see a woman in her 30s, blonde hair, anxious expression, still wearing scrubs like she'd come directly from work. "Yes," Detective Morrison replied. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for my daughter. I got a call that she'd been in an accident, but when I went to the room number they gave me, there was a different child there. The nurses said there might have been a mix-up with room numbers." Detective Morrison and I exchanged glances. "What's your daughter's name?" the detective asked. Emma Catherine Walsh. She's 7 years old, brown hair, brown eyes. She was supposed to be at her father's house today, but apparently there was an accident." The injured girl in the bed had gone very quiet, watching the blonde woman with an expression I couldn't read. "Ma'am, can you describe what your daughter was wearing when you last saw her?" "Blue jeans and a pink t-shirt with a unicorn on it, and her favorite shoes, the ones with the light-up soles." Detective Morrison looked at the injured girl's belongings, which were in a clear plastic bag on the bedside table. Blue jeans, pink unicorn shirt, light-up shoes. "Emma," the woman said, approaching the bed. "Emma, baby, are you okay?" The injured girl's composure cracked completely. "Mommy, I got confused. Everyone was asking me questions, and I didn't know what to say." The woman gathered the child into her arms, and suddenly, everything about the girl's posture and demeanor changed. She melted into the embrace in a way that looked completely natural, completely right. "It's okay, baby. Mommy's here now." Detective Morrison stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm Detective Morrison. We need to talk." Over the next hour, the real story began to emerge. Emma Walsh lived with her mother, Lisa, and spent weekends with her father, David. David Walsh worked in construction and had been struggling financially since his own divorce. 3 months ago, he'd met a woman named Carol who claimed to work for a private investigation firm. Carol had offered David money, a lot of money, to participate in what she called a custody evaluation exercise. She explained that a wealthy family was involved in a complex custody dispute, and they needed to test the reliability of their security systems and the response protocols of local authorities. David's role was simple. He was supposed to take Emma to specific locations at specific times, and Carol's team would observe and document how quickly emergency services responded to various scenarios. Emma was supposed to carry identification for a fictitious child named Sophia Ebarita to test whether hospitals and police could detect false identification. It was supposed to be harmless, according to Carol. No one would be hurt, no laws would be broken, and David would be paid $5,000 for his participation. "I thought it was legitimate," Lisa Walsh said, tears streaming down her face. "David showed me the contract, the business cards, everything looked professional, and we needed the money so badly. Emma's been asking for piano lessons, and there were medical bills from when she broke her arm last year." Emma, meanwhile, had been coached to memorize details about the Ebarita family. Carol had provided her with photos, stories, and specific information to help her play the role of being Sophia. Emma thought it was a game, a form of elaborate dress-up that would help a nice family with their problems. "She told me I was helping another little girl," Emma said quietly. "She said if I pretended to be Sophia for a few hours, then the real Sophia would be safer." The car accident hadn't been part of the plan.
David was supposed to bring Emma to the hospital for a routine test of the false identification, but another driver had run a red light and hit their car. Emma had been knocked unconscious, and David had panicked and fled the scene rather than risk being arrested for whatever he'd gotten involved in. Detective Morrison was taking detailed notes and making phone calls to various departments. The investigation was expanding rapidly as the scope of the deception became clear. "Mrs. Walsh, we're going to need you to work with us to find this Carol person and everyone else involved in this scheme. What your ex-husband participated in wasn't a custody evaluation. It was identity theft, fraud, and child endangerment. Are we in trouble? Your ex-husband is in serious legal trouble. You and Emma are victims here, but we'll need your cooperation to catch the people who orchestrated this." Rebecca and I stood in the hallway with Sophia, trying to process everything we'd learned. Our quiet, predictable life had been invaded by strangers who had turned our daughter into a character in someone else's elaborate fiction. "Why us?" Rebecca asked, voicing the question that had been forming in my mind. Why would anyone target our family specifically? Detective Morrison had been wondering the same thing. That's the key question. Random identity theft usually involves stealing information from databases or documents. This was targeted surveillance of your specific family. Someone invested months of time and significant money to learn the intimate details of your lives. Could it be related to Anthony's work? Rebecca asked. Construction companies sometimes handle valuable materials, expensive equipment. I shook my head. I work for a small residential contractor. We build houses and do renovations, nothing that would interest organized criminals. What about your job, Rebecca? Banks handle large amounts of money. I'm a loan officer at a community bank. I process mortgage applications and personal loans, nothing high-level or sensitive. Detective Morrison frowned. There's something else we're missing. This level of planning and execution suggests professional involvement, but the goal isn't clear. If someone wanted to kidnap Sophia, they could have done it much more simply. If they wanted to steal your identities for financial fraud, they wouldn't need to create a physical double. That's when it hit me. What if they weren't trying to replace Sophia? What if they were trying to create two of her? What do you mean? Think about it. They didn't try to take our daughter away. They created a second version of her. Two children with the same identity, same background, same family history. But why would anyone want that? I thought about the timing, about the months of surveillance, about the careful coaching Emma had received. What if someone was planning to use both children for something? What if having two identical identities was the point? Detective Morrison's expression grew more serious. That's a concerning theory. Let me make some calls. While she stepped away to contact other departments, Rebecca and I found ourselves alone with Sophia in the small consultation room. Our daughter had been remarkably patient throughout the entire ordeal, but I could see she was getting tired and confused. "Daddy, why did that girl have my name?" "Some bad people taught her to pretend to be you, sweetheart, but the police are going to make sure it doesn't happen again." Was she trying to steal my life? The question was so perceptive it took my breath away. "I don't know, baby. Maybe. But your life is safe with Mommy and me." Rebecca reached over and squeezed my hand. Despite our divorce, despite all the ways we'd grown apart, we were united in protecting our daughter. "Anthony," she said quietly, "I've been thinking about the timeline. 6 months ago, I started dating Mark. Around the same time, you mentioned feeling like someone was watching the house." I remembered. There had been a few evenings when I'd noticed the same car parked across the street, times when I'd felt eyes on us during our trips to the playground. I'd dismissed it as paranoia, the normal anxiety of a single father trying to keep his daughter safe. "You think Mark is involved?" "I don't know, but the timing is suspicious." Detective Morrison returned with a grim expression.
"I've been in contact with the FBI. What you're describing fits the pattern of several cases they've been investigating across multiple states." Cases? Identity farming. Criminal organizations identify middle-class families with children, study their routines and personal details, then create duplicate identities for other children. The duplicates are used in various schemes: insurance fraud, government benefit fraud, human trafficking documentation. The words hit me like a physical blow. Human trafficking. Are you saying our daughter was being prepared for trafficking?
We don't know yet, but the level of detail in Emma's coaching, the professional quality of the fake identification, the months of surveillance, it all fits the pattern. Rebecca's face had gone white. How many other families are involved? We're still investigating, but Mr. Ebarita, your theory about creating two identical identities might be correct. If traffickers can create perfect documentation for children, they can move them across state lines, enroll them in schools, access medical care, all while appearing completely legitimate. What happens now? We're going to need you to work with federal agents to identify everyone who might have had access to your family's information. We'll need to examine your daily routines, your social media presence, any public records that might have been used to build Sophia's false identity. Over the next several hours, Rebecca and I found ourselves reliving the past 6 months in excruciating detail. Every routine, every habit, every small piece of our lives that had been observed and cataloged by strangers. The federal agents who arrived that evening were thorough and professional, but their questions revealed just how vulnerable we'd been without realizing it. Our social media posts had shown Emma's potential handlers exactly where we went and when. Sophia's school pickup routine had been documented. Even our grocery shopping habits had been studied and replicated. The good news, Agent Sarah Chen explained, is that we caught this before the final phase of whatever operation was planned. Emma Walsh's accident was unintended, but it exposed the scheme before any children were actually trafficked. How many other children like Emma are out there? We don't know yet, but we're working with local law enforcement across several states to identify other potential cases. As the evening wore on, the pieces of the puzzle began fitting together. Carol, the woman who had recruited David Walsh, was likely part of a larger organization that specialized in creating false identities for criminal purposes. The custody evaluation story was just one of several cover stories they used to recruit desperate parents to participate in their schemes. Mark, Rebecca's boyfriend, turned out to be uninvolved, but had unknowingly provided information about our family during casual conversations with Rebecca. She'd mentioned Sophia's school, our address, my work schedule, all innocent details that had been passed along and used by people watching from a distance. The sophistication of this operation is remarkable, Agent Chen said. They had backup plans, multiple layers of false documentation, and apparently several families under surveillance simultaneously. Are we still in danger? We don't believe so. The arrest of David Walsh and the exposure of Emma's false identity has likely caused them to abandon whatever plans they had for your family, but we'll be monitoring your situation closely for the next several months. By 10 p.m., Sophia had fallen asleep in my arms in the consultation room. Rebecca sat beside us, occasionally reaching over to stroke our daughter's hair. Despite everything that had happened, despite the fear and confusion of the day, we were together and safe. I keep thinking about Emma, Rebecca said quietly. That little girl was just playing a game. She had no idea she was being used. What will happen to her? She'll go home with her mother. David Walsh will face serious charges, but Emma and Lisa are victims. They'll receive counseling and support to help them process what happened. Detective Morrison appeared in the doorway. Mr. and Mrs. Ebarita, we're ready to let you go home. We have your contact information and we'll be in touch tomorrow to coordinate with the federal investigation. The drive home was quiet. Sophia had woken up briefly when we transferred her to the car seat, but she fell back asleep almost immediately. Rebecca followed us back to the house on Maple Street, unwilling to let Sophia out of her sight until she was safely home. Inside, everything looked exactly the same as it had that morning. Sophia's coloring books were still spread across the coffee table. Her backpack was still by the front door. The orange fish crackers were still scattered across the kitchen counter where she'd left them during her after-school snack. But nothing felt the same. The house that had been our safe haven, our private space, now felt exposed and vulnerable. Strangers had studied this place, cataloged its details, used its intimacy as a weapon against us. Anthony, Rebecca said as I tucked Sophia into bed, I don't think she should be alone tonight. Can I stay here? Of course. For the first time since our divorce, Rebecca slept in the guest room down the hall from Sophia's bedroom. I lay awake most of the night, listening to the normal sounds of the house and wondering which ones might have been noticed and recorded by the people who had been watching us. The next morning brought a parade of federal agents, local detectives, and social workers. Our quiet neighborhood became the center of a major investigation as agents interviewed neighbors, examined our property for signs of surveillance equipment, and documented every aspect of our daily routines. Mrs. Chen from across the street remembered seeing unfamiliar cars parked on the street several times over the past few months. Mr. Williams recalled a woman with a camera who claimed to be documenting local architecture for a historical society. Small details that had seemed innocent at the time now revealed themselves as pieces of a larger surveillance operation. They were very professional, Agent Chen explained, as we watched technicians examine our phone lines and internet connection. Most families never realize they're being watched. You only discovered it because of the accidental exposure during Emma's accident. How long were they planning to continue watching us? Based on similar cases, probably another month or two. They typically observe families for 6 to 8 months before moving to the operational phase. What's the operational phase? Agent Chen hesitated before answering. That's when they would have attempted to either abduct your daughter or create a situation where she could be easily taken. Having Emma as a documented duplicate would have made it much easier to move Sophia without triggering immediate alerts. The thought that we'd been unknowingly living under surveillance for months, that strangers had been planning to take our daughter, made me feel sick and angry in ways I'd never experienced before. But there was something else, something that felt almost worse than the violation of our privacy. We'd been chosen specifically because we seemed vulnerable. A divorced couple, a single father, a routine that was predictable and easy to study. Our normal, quiet life had made us perfect targets. Agent Chen, I said, how do we make sure this never happen again? Honestly, complete security is impossible, but there are steps you can take to make yourselves less attractive targets. Vary your routines, be more cautious about social media, pay attention to your surroundings. And if we notice something suspicious, call immediately. Don't investigate on your own. Don't confront anyone. Just call. These organizations are dangerous when they feel threatened. Over the following days, more details emerged about the scope of the operation. Carol turned out to be one of at least 6 people involved in the identity farming scheme. David Walsh provided information that led to arrests in 3 other states. Emma's accident had effectively brought down an organization that had been operating for over 2 years. You were lucky, Detective Morrison told us during one of her follow-up visits. Emma's injury and David's panic exposed this before any children were actually taken. Most families in your situation never find out what happened until it's too late. How many other families were being watched? At least 12 that we know of, probably more. The organization had been very successful at staying under the radar. Rebecca had taken time off work to help deal with the investigation and to stay close to Sophia. Our daughter had been remarkably resilient, adapting to the extra attention and security measures with the flexibility that children often show in crisis situations. "Daddy, are the bad people gone now?" she asked one evening as I was reading her bedtime story. "Yes, sweetheart. The police caught them and they can't bother us anymore." "Good. I didn't like that other girl having my name." "She was just confused, baby. She wasn't trying to be mean." "I know, but I'm the only Sophia Ebarita, right? You're the only one that matters." A week after the incident at the hospital, Agent Chen called with an update. "We've made arrests in connection with your case, and we've dismantled the organization that was targeting your family. You're safe now." "What about the other families?" "We're working with them individually. Some were further along in the process than others, but we caught this before any children were actually trafficked." "And Emma, how is she doing?"
She's resilient. Children often recover from these situations better than adults. She's receiving counseling, and her mother is working with victim services to help her process what happened. That evening, Rebecca and I sat on the front porch while Sophia played in the backyard. The streetlights were coming on, and the neighborhood was settling into its normal evening rhythm. "Anthony," Rebecca said, "I've been thinking about what Agent Chen said about us being chosen because we seemed vulnerable." "What about it?" "Maybe we were vulnerable. Maybe the divorce, the custody schedule, the way we've been living separate lives made us easier targets." I thought about that. Our predictable routines, our separate households, the way we'd organized our lives around convenience rather than security. "What are you suggesting?"
"I'm not suggesting we get back together," she said quickly, "but maybe we need to think differently about how we protect Sophia. Maybe we need to be more connected, more aware of each other's lives." She was right. The criminals had exploited the gaps in our communication, the spaces between our separate lives where information could be gathered without either of us noticing. "We could try family meetings," I suggested. "Weekly check-ins about Sophia's schedule, anything unusual we've noticed, any concerns. And maybe we should know more about each other's personal lives. If I'm dating someone, you should meet them. If you're dating someone, I should know about it." It wasn't about rekindling our romantic relationship. It was about building a security network around our daughter that couldn't be easily penetrated by outsiders. "There's something else," Rebecca said. "I've been thinking about moving back to this neighborhood. Not this house," she added quickly, "but somewhere nearby, so we're not living across town from each other. That would make the logistics easier. And it would make surveillance harder. If we're both around more often, if neighbors see both of us regularly, it would be harder for strangers to study our routines." Over the next few weeks, we implemented changes that made our lives less predictable and more secure. Rebecca found an apartment 3 blocks away. We started varying Sophia's pickup times and routes. We limited our social media posting and made our profiles more private. But the most important change was less tangible. We started communicating more, sharing information more freely, and trusting each other with details about our daily lives. Not because we were getting back together, but because protecting Sophia required us to work as a team. The investigation continued for months, with occasional updates from Agent Chen and Detective Morrison. More arrests were made, more families were contacted, and gradually the full scope of the identity farming operation became clear. "You were part of a much larger scheme," Agent Chen explained during one of her final visits. "The organization had been operating in 12 states, targeting middle-class families with children between ages 5 and 10. They'd successfully created false identities for over 30 children before we shut them down." "What happened to those children?" "Most were returned to their families. A few cases are still being investigated. But Anthony, what you experienced was just the beginning of what could have been a much more serious crime." 6 months later, life had settled into new routines. Rebecca lived close enough to walk to our house, Sophia felt secure with both parents nearby, and the acute fear of being watched had faded into a general awareness of our surroundings. But the experience had changed us in permanent ways. We understood now how vulnerable ordinary families could be, how easily normal life could be invaded and manipulated by people with criminal intentions. "Daddy," Sophia said one evening as we were walking home from the park, "do you remember that day when the other girl had my name?" "I remember." "Do you think she's okay now?" "I think so, sweetheart. She's home with her real mommy and she's safe." "Good. I hope she gets to keep her real name now." "She does." We walked the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, past houses where neighbors waved from their porches, past the corner store where we bought orange fish crackers, past all the ordinary landmarks of our ordinary life. But I was watching, always watching now. Not with fear, but with awareness, because I'd learned that the people who loved you most could be the last to notice when someone else was watching too. The call that had started everything, the impossible call about my daughter being in surgery while she sat next to me eating crackers, had revealed a truth I'd never wanted to know, that safety is always temporary, that privacy is always fragile, and that protecting the people you love requires constant vigilance. But it had also revealed something else, that when ordinary people face extraordinary threats, they're capable of extraordinary resilience. That families can survive having their lives invaded and manipulated, that children can recover from being used as pawns in adult games, and that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the thing that teaches you how strong you really are. I still have the hospital bracelet they gave Sophia that day, just in case we needed to prove who she was. I keep it in my wallet not as a reminder of fear, but as a reminder of the day I learned that being her father meant more than providing food and shelter and bedtime stories. It meant being willing to fight for her identity, her safety, her right to be exactly who she was meant to be. It meant being willing to do whatever it took to make sure she remained the only Sophia Ebarita who mattered. 3 weeks after the hospital incident, I thought we were moving toward normal. The federal agents had completed their interviews, the surveillance equipment had been removed from our neighborhood, and Sophia was sleeping through the night again without asking if the bad people were really gone. Rebecca had found an apartment 4 blocks away and was settling into a routine that kept her close but respected our boundaries. Everything seemed to be healing. Then I found the envelope. It was a Tuesday morning, garbage day, and I was dragging the bins to the curb when I noticed something wedged under my truck's windshield wiper. Not a flyer or advertisement, but a manila envelope, business-sized, with my name written in careful block letters across the front. No return address, no postmark, just Anthony Ebarita in black ink. Inside was a single photograph and a typed note on plain white paper. The photograph showed me and Sophia at the park 3 days earlier. We were on the swings, both of us laughing at something she'd said about the ducks at the pond. It was a perfect candid shot, taken from a distance with a good camera. Professional quality. The note was brief. The operation was bigger than they told you. Call the number below if you want the whole truth. Come alone. Below that was a phone number with a local area code. I stood in my driveway, holding the envelope, feeling the same cold dread I'd experienced that day at the hospital. The investigation was supposed to be over. The criminals were supposed to be in custody. We were supposed to be safe. But someone had been watching us again. I went inside and made coffee with hands that shook slightly, trying to think rationally about what to do next. Agent Chen had given me her direct number and told me to call immediately if anything unusual happened. This definitely qualified as unusual. But the note had said to come alone, and something about the phrasing made me hesitate. The operation was bigger than they told you. Not bigger than we knew, but bigger than they told us, as if the authorities had deliberately withheld information. I called Rebecca instead. "Anthony, is everything okay? Can you come over? Something's happened and I need you to see it before I decide what to do." She arrived 20 minutes later, still in her work clothes, her face tight with worry. When I showed her the photograph and note, she sank into the kitchen chair like her legs had given out. "They're still watching us." "It looks that way." "But Agent Chen said the organization was dismantled. She said we were safe." "That's what they told us." Rebecca studied the photograph more carefully. "This was taken with professional equipment. Look at the clarity, the depth of field. This isn't someone with a cell phone camera." "Which means what?" "Which means whoever sent this has resources, real resources." We sat in silence for several minutes, both of us trying to process what this meant. Either the federal investigation had missed part of the organization, or someone new had taken an interest in our family, or the authorities had lied to us about the scope of what they had uncovered. "Are you going to call the number?" Rebecca asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to call Agent Chen first. And the other part?" "The other part wants to know what they're not telling us." Rebecca reached across the table and took my hand. "Whatever you decide, we do it together. No more secrets, no more operating separately."
The note said to come alone. The note was written by someone who's been stalking our family. We don't follow their instructions. She was right. We'd learned that isolation made us vulnerable. Whatever game was being played now, we'd play it as a team. I dialed the number from my phone, put it on speaker, and let it ring 4 times before someone answered. "Mr. Ebarita, thank you for calling." The voice was male, middle-aged, with a slight accent I couldn't place immediately. Not threatening, but careful, measured. "Who is this?" "Someone who knows more about what happened to your family than the FBI shared with you. Are you somewhere you can talk freely?" "I'm with my ex-wife. She stays." A pause. "That's acceptable." "Mr. Ebarita, what you experienced was not an isolated incident, and the organization that targeted your family was not dismantled as completely as you were told." "What do you mean?" "The people who were arrested were operational staff. The individuals who financed and directed the identity farming scheme were never identified. They simply moved their operations and began targeting new families." Rebecca leaned closer to the phone. "How do you know this?" "Because I was part of the investigation that the FBI didn't tell you about. The one they conducted after they realized their arrests had only scratched the surface." "Are you law enforcement?" "I was." I'm retired now, but I've been following this case because it connects to something much larger. Mr. Ebarita, your family wasn't chosen randomly. You were selected specifically because of your background. What background? Your father was military, Air Force intelligence, stationed in Germany during the 1980s. He had access to classified information about NATO operations. I felt the blood drain from my face. My father had served in the Air Force, but he'd never talked about his work in detail. He died when I was 25, and most of his military records had been sealed. What does my father's service have to do with identity theft? The organization that targeted your family specializes in acquiring the children of former intelligence personnel. They use the children's identities to create documentation for foreign operatives entering the United States. That's insane. Is it? Think about it. The children of former intelligence officers have clean backgrounds, American birth certificates, family histories that can be verified. They're perfect cover identities for people who need to disappear into American society. Rebecca was staring at me with wide eyes. Anthony, did you know about your father's work? He said he worked on computers, database management. I never thought it was anything classified. The voice on the phone continued. Your father helped develop early digital intelligence networks. His work was highly classified, and his family would have been considered potential targets for foreign intelligence services. Why didn't anyone tell me this? Because officially, the threat ended when the Cold War ended. But unofficially, there are still groups who find value in the identities of intelligence families. What happened to Sophia was an attempt to acquire her identity for ongoing operations. I tried to process what I was hearing. Emma Walsh's accident hadn't just exposed a random criminal scheme. It had revealed an attempt to steal my daughter's identity for use by foreign operatives. If you know all this, why aren't you working with the FBI? Because the FBI investigation was compromised. Someone within the federal task force was feeding information to the people they were supposed to be catching. Rebecca grabbed my arm. Anthony, this means we're still not safe. The voice continued. The photograph I left was taken to demonstrate that you're still under surveillance. The people behind this haven't given up on acquiring Sophia's identity. They've just changed their approach. What kind of approach? They're going to try to force you to cooperate voluntarily. What do you mean? They're going to create a situation where giving them access to Sophia's documentation seems like the only way to protect her. Before I could ask what that meant, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. It was another photograph, this one showing Rebecca leaving her apartment that morning. Below the image was a message, "We know where everyone goes." Rebecca saw it and went pale. They're watching both of us. Mr. Ebarita, the voice said, I can help you, but we need to meet in person. There are things I can't explain over the phone. Where? Do you know Miller's Diner on Route 9? Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come through the back entrance. Sit in the last booth. I'll find you. How will I recognize you? You won't need to. I'll recognize you. The line went dead. Rebecca and I sat in the kitchen staring at my phone, trying to absorb what we just learned. Our quiet family crisis had revealed connections to intelligence operations, foreign espionage, and criminal networks that apparently reached into the federal agencies that were supposed to protect us. Do you think he's telling the truth? Rebecca asked. I don't know, but someone is still watching us, and the FBI said they'd caught everyone. So either this guy is lying, or Agent Chen was lying. Or Agent Chen doesn't know the whole truth either. That night, I called my mother in Phoenix. She was 73 now, living in a retirement community, spending her days playing bridge and complaining about the heat. She'd remarried after my father's death and rarely talked about her first husband's military service. Mom, I need to ask you about Dad's work in the Air Force. Anthony, you know he didn't like to talk about that. I know, but it's important. Did he ever mention anything about classified work, intelligence operations? There was a long pause. Why are you asking about this now? Something's happened with Sophia. I can't explain everything, but I need to know if Dad's work might have put our family at risk. Another pause, longer this time. Your father made me promise never to talk about his work. He said it was safer for everyone if certain things stayed buried. Mom, please, Sophia might be in danger. I heard her sigh deeply. He worked on communication networks, secret ones. He helped design systems that allowed American agents to stay in contact with headquarters while they were operating in foreign countries. What kind of foreign countries?
Soviet Union, East Germany, places like that. He said the work was so sensitive that even decades later, it could put his family at risk if the wrong people found out about it. My heart was pounding. Did he ever mention anything about identity theft? About people who might target the families of intelligence personnel? He said there were groups that kept lists, names of American intelligence families, their children, where they lived. He said those lists never went away, they just changed hands.
Why didn't you ever tell me this? Because he made me promise, and because I hoped it would never matter. After I hung up, I told Rebecca everything my mother had said. We spent the rest of the evening researching intelligence operations from the 1980s, trying to understand what my father might have been involved in and why it would matter 30 years later. What we found was disturbing. During the Cold War, both sides had compiled extensive databases of intelligence personnel and their families. These databases had reportedly been sold and resold after the Soviet collapse, ending up in the hands of criminal organizations and foreign intelligence services. "It makes sense," Rebecca said as we read through declassified documents on my laptop. "If you wanted to create perfect American identities for foreign operatives, the children of former intelligence officers would be ideal. Clean backgrounds, verifiable family histories, no red flags. But how would they know about my father's work? His service records are classified. Maybe they don't need official records. Maybe they have their own databases." The next morning, I dropped Sophia at school with extra precautions. I walked her all the way to her classroom, spoke with Mrs. Patterson about keeping her inside during recess, and gave the school office Agent Chen's contact information in case anything unusual happened. Rebecca took the day off work to go with me to meet the mysterious caller. We agreed that whatever was happening, we wouldn't face it separately. Miller's Diner was a classic American roadhouse, the kind of place with vinyl booths, bottomless coffee, and waitresses who called everyone Hun. The back entrance led directly into the dining area, past the kitchen and the restrooms, to a row of booths along the far wall. We sat in the last booth as instructed and ordered coffee. At exactly 2 p.m., a man in his 60s approached our table. Gray hair, average height, wearing a brown jacket and jeans. He looked like a retired teacher or insurance agent, completely unremarkable. "Mr. and Mrs. Ebarita?" "Yes." He slid into the booth across from us. "My name is Walter Hoffman. I spent 30 years with the Defense Intelligence Agency before retiring 5 years ago." He pulled out a leather wallet and showed us credentials that looked official, though I had no way to verify them. "Mr. Hoffman," Rebecca said, "yesterday you told us that the investigation into our family was compromised. What did you mean?" "I meant that someone within the federal task force was feeding information to the people they were supposed to be investigating. Every time the FBI got close to the real organizers, those people disappeared." "How do you know this?" "Because I was brought in as a consultant after the Emma Walsh incident. My former colleagues at DIA were concerned that the identity farming scheme might be connected to foreign intelligence operations." He pulled out a manila folder and placed it on the table between us. "What you're about to see is classified information that I'm sharing without authorization. If you repeat any of this, I could face federal prosecution." Rebecca and I exchanged glances. We'd come this far. We needed to know the truth. Hoffman opened the folder and pulled out several photographs. They showed surveillance images of people I didn't recognize, along with documents that appeared to be intelligence reports. "The organization that targeted your family is called the Heritage Network. They've been operating for 12 years, acquiring the identities of children from intelligence families and using those identities to create documentation for foreign operatives." "What kind of operatives?" "Russian, Chinese, North Korean, anyone who needs clean American identities for long-term operations in the United States." He pulled out another document. "This is a list of families they've targeted over the past 5 years. 17 families, 31 children. Your family was number 18. I scanned the list. Names, addresses, brief descriptions of the parents' intelligence backgrounds. All of the fathers had served in various military or civilian intelligence roles during the 1980s and 90s. What happened to the other children? Some had their identities stolen without their families ever knowing. Others were approached directly, with their parents being told that cooperation was necessary for national security.
And if they refused, Hoffman's expression darkened. The Heritage Network has connections to organized crime. Families who refuse to cooperate tend to experience unfortunate accidents. Rebecca reached for my hand under the table. Are you saying they might hurt Sophia? I'm saying they've invested too much time and money in acquiring her identity to simply walk away. The arrests that followed Emma Walsh's accident disrupted their operation, but they didn't end it. What do they want from us? Initially, they wanted to create a duplicate identity using Sophia's information. Now that their original plan has been exposed, they'll probably try a different approach, such as, they might offer you money to cooperate. They might threaten other family members. They might create situations where helping them seems like the only way to protect Sophia. I thought about the photographs we'd received, the demonstration that we were still being watched. What can we do? You can disappear. New identities, new location, federal witness protection. That's not a life. Sophia deserves to grow up in her own community with her own name. Then you can fight back. How? Hoffman leaned forward. Help me expose the Heritage Network completely. Not just the operational staff, but the organizers and financiers. The people who have been buying and selling intelligence family databases for decades. What would that involve? It would mean pretending to cooperate with them while documenting their activities. It would mean putting yourselves at risk to gather evidence that could bring down the entire organization. Rebecca was shaking her head. We're not trained for that kind of thing. We're not spies. No, but you're highly motivated. And I am trained for this kind of thing. What's your plan? When they contact you again, and they will, you tell them you're willing to discuss cooperation. You arrange a meeting. I'll help you prepare for it, and I'll make sure you're protected. And then what? Then we record everything. We document their operations, identify their leadership, and turn it all over to the parts of the federal government that aren't compromised. I looked at Rebecca. This wasn't the quiet, safe life we'd been trying to rebuild for Sophia, but it might be the only way to ensure she could have a quiet, safe life in the future. If we do this, I said, what happens to Sophia while we're playing spy games? She goes to stay with relatives outside the state until this is over. Somewhere the Heritage Network can't reach her. How long would that take? 6 months, maybe less. Long enough to gather evidence and make arrests. Rebecca was quiet for a long time, staring at the documents spread across the table. Finally, she looked up at Hoffman. If we don't do this, they'll keep coming after her. Eventually, yes. The Heritage Network is patient, but they don't give up easily. Your daughter's identity is valuable to them. And if we do this and something goes wrong, then at least you'll have tried to stop them. It wasn't much of a choice, but it was the only choice we had. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.